Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. You're doing dry January, you're taking a break from alcohol, but your partner isn't doing it with you, which leads to a whole set of complications, mindset trips, and ways to feel like maybe you guys are losing some of your bond. I have dealt with this question so many times with my clients, my students, and even in my own relationship. So, this episode is all about how to make an incredible change for yourself in your life without leaving your partner behind and also not getting caught up necessarily in what they're doing. These are the mindset tips that you're going to want to have in order to grow closer to your partner, even though you might be changing and they are not, and how to really understand it just in a way that will make you feel more peace and stop trying to control them as well. So, welcome to this episode. We are doing a dry January series. So, this is the third, the third one of it. Actually, maybe it's the fourth. We have the dry January success, all of the mindset tips that you're going to want to grab to make this literally the easiest month ever. And I have a very controversial view on alcohol and going alcohol free, but if you were to adopt some of these mindset tips, it literally would make you lose your desire to drink. We also talk about the weird side effects of dry January, like sugar cravings and boredom. And I also cover what actually happens to your body with a 31-day break from alcohol, coming straight from science and biology. So, yes, this is the fourth episode in our series on dry January. And today it's all about interpersonal relationships. Now, I'm going to speak mostly from the perspective of having a partner, but honestly, this can apply for your friends, for your family, for anyone else who you feel like you want to continue on this no drinking path or you want to drink a lot less, but you're with someone who literally loves to drink. How do you deal with something like that? And I wanted to share that, a lot of people who listen to this show are women. And although we have some incredible guys who are in the euphoric community as well, it is often more typical that a woman comes to the conclusion that alcohol is not serving her earlier than a guy will. And there's so many reasons for that. First of all, I think women are taught to be more intuitive, and I think both sexes can be very intuitive, but we're conditioned, we're socialized. So I think women have a deeper connection with their intuition and a more willingness to actually listen to it. And just think of like a silly example. Let's imagine that a man and a woman go to a wedding and they both drink way too much. The woman will probably wake up with really deep shame and just be really embarrassed about it, feel like she let herself down again. And honestly, maybe the man feels the same about it deep in his subconscious, but maybe he's been programmed and conditioned to just literally laugh it off and call it a good time and a good time with his buddies and whatever that he's hungover the next day. Now, obviously, there are so many men out there who are so much more in touch with their feelings, that are so much more in touch with what is actually their subconscious mind is telling them around their values and their behavior and stuff like that. But it's also easier, especially with movies like The Hangover and stuff like that. There's a whole culture of just literally laughing it off when it comes to this topic. So, more likely than not, women come to the conclusion that their intuition is guiding them away from alcohol a little faster than men sometimes. So if you are in a, female male relationship, you are probably the first one who, wanted to go alcohol free. And this often too can be a very beautiful thing. I actually think that women are more visionary in a relationship than men. And I can see that a lot of times when it comes to stretching your family and doing something new and, really going out on a limb or taking a risk, it's often the woman who is the one who is the more visionary, who can see the grander, bigger picture than a man. And that was true in my parents' relationship. It's probably true in my relationship, though, my husband's awesome and stuff, but it's true. I hold the bigger visionary role in the family. And obviously, this isn't like to typecast every single person out there in relationships, but it can be something that you can take on with a lot more confidence of like, yeah, I decided to do this thing. It's a little different. It's different from the way we've always been together, but I'm doing something for us. I'm being a visionary in this relationship, even if my partner hasn't really caught along yet. So let's start with that. Because it can feel really threatening to your partner if you were all of a sudden just going to change and not be the same version of you that they fell in love with. And depending on how long you've been together, I met my husband when I was 23 years old. I feel so lucky that that happened because I was in such a toxic relationship before him. I was in this like really big party lifestyle before him. I didn't do that much work on myself yet, but I think that because I saw what I really didn't want, I was somehow able to attract a man that was so much better for me. That wasn't toxic. We built like a much stronger, solid relationship. But to say that we didn't drink together would be a misnomer, right? We definitely built our relationship on drinking. And especially at 23, I was still used to going out and wanting to party and, drinking together, making gin martinis and stuff at home. And then it morphed into wine tastings. And then we kind of morphed into trying to run half marathons and well, I guess it wasn't half marathons yet, but it was at that point 5Ks. We started morphing into that. And so we did try to get healthier. We tried to drink less. So we kind of went on that journey together. We've been together over 15 years now. So there's a lot of different stages, but I've been alcohol free for almost 8 of those years now. But even before I completely went alcohol free, we weren't necessarily like partying together every single night. We had both kind of settled into a more healthy lifestyle, but still, every time we did something that was fun together, it involved alcohol. Like, no matter what, even though we're not partying, we're not like those people anymore, we're healthier, all this kind of stuff. We go to the pool and drink beers, right? We go out to play pool, like billiards, and we drink. We go to our friend's game night and we drink. We go to a wedding and we drink. We go to sushi and we drink. It's like anything you could think of how we're spending quality time together, alcohol is involved, even if it was more grown up and adult at that point. So my husband definitely fell in love with a certain version of me. And, I'm sure he probably didn't miss that total party version of me because that was like a lot of drama involved with that. But, just the version of him that like me that like, would have a drink with him and whatnot, it can feel threatening for whatever party is the one that isn't changing. And so I have the strategy that I teach my clients called the breadcrumb strategy. So, in order to not kind of scare your partner or make it seem like, oh my gosh, this is changing forever and you're completely losing the old version of me, it's called the breadcrumb strategy, where you slowly give him clues. And again, I'm in this episode, I'm going to just talk about like a woman being with a man. Obviously, please make it make sense for whatever situation you're in, whatever relationship you're in. But in this example, I am going to leave clues for my partner for him to slowly understand that I'm actually happier without alcohol. And this breadcrumb strategy, what it looked like for me was I was doing dry January, and I would tell my partner how much better I'm sleeping. And I would tell my partner how much fun I had on a hike because I just connected with nature a lot more. And I would tell my partner like, oh my God, I haven't had such a like hard belly laugh since I was in high school. So by the time I actually decide to continue being alcohol free, my partner is not completely caught off guard, right? He's already been getting these clues, like basically left like on a trail, these little breadcrumbs to understand that his wife feels so much better and so much happier without alcohol. And it's not as threatening as just like, oh, cold turkey, I'm just not drinking with you anymore. Sorry, bye, right? Now, if you're just doing dry January, maybe you haven't made decisions about what you're going to do after dry January yet. Stay tuned for our next episode around that. But you definitely want to feel that he isn't getting as threatened, that he just understands like, oh my gosh, this is really serving her. And when, you're in a relationship, when someone wants the best for you, they're slowly starting to understand, even though it's a total paradigm shift from the way that you were before. And you know what? Oftentimes, our partners, it's not the change in the habit that gets to them, it's the fear that they're going to be left behind. So let me give you an example. My partner and I signed up for 5Ks maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago together. And we both trained for these 5Ks. We would run together and stuff like that. Again, we're still drinking at this point. But my husband decides to continue running. And when I go alcohol free, I decide to do a half marathon with him. So again, we train together. But then he keeps running after that. I'm kind of like, running, this is cool. This is a cool feat to do, but I don't think I want to have like my main form of exercise always to be training for these races. So he continues doing these half marathons and I'm not. And there was even a part of me that was like, okay, we were doing date night together. We were running together. If I don't continue with him and continue signing up for these half marathons with him, am I going to be left behind? And almost on a physical level, yes, because at one point, you can run 13 miles and, a few years later, you don't have that conditioning anymore. But also just that fear that he's gonna get so absorbed in this like hobby and I don't share the hobby with him anymore. So are we gonna like lose connection with that? And what I mean to say is oftentimes our partners, if they're not doing as well with the change as we would like, it's actually that fear of being left behind. That's what's the undercurrent of it. And so it's important for you as your job in that moment to ensure that you are showing them a lot of loving attention, that you are being really intentional about spending quality time with them. For example, let's say that, every night or every weekend night, your partner and you pour a few glasses of wine and you hang out and watch TV. And now it's dry January and you're like, I can't even be downstairs anymore. I need to like go upstairs at 7 p.m. and not even see them anymore and not be around that environment. And that might be something you have to do just because you're trying to make this change and you're still, working through the subconscious. Obviously, if you really want to understand how to change your subconscious desire to drink, I really recommend you join Euphoric the Club. I lay down the whole process and all of my signature programs that you can follow along with to just lose the desire to drink. But oftentimes, if you're just doing dry January, you don't know all this stuff about the subconscious. You're just trying to get yourself away from the environment in which drinking is. And so I've met a lot of clients, for example, or students who would literally just like leave the scene of someone else drinking so that they're not in front of it. And if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do, whatever. But as you can see, if that's your main bonding time with your partner, and all of a sudden you're not hanging out with them at all anymore, it's already causing a rift and already causing disconnection. And so I'm not saying that you got to go sit and watch your partner drink, but it's time to get intentional about how you will spend quality time together. And I think this is where you can really inject in a lot of new things. You can start injecting new activities. You can invite your partner to go on a hike. You can have, like suggest something completely different. And even if like Friday nights are always for drinking in your relationship, maybe you do something that wouldn't even like include alcohol anyway, like say go ice skating or just something totally off the wall and have them share that experience with you. It's not like you're telling them, hey, you can't drink on this Friday night, but let's do something completely different, completely off the wall so that we can bond in a new way. And I remember having to be really intentional about this with my partner too. So like I shared, we decided to sign up for a half marathon together. And all of a sudden, date night was on the pavement. We were running together. And it was kind of cute, like we would run 3 to 5 to 7 miles together, usually after work. And it was what we did on a Friday night. And we talked. Like it wasn't the kind of running that you're so out of breath. It was the kind of running that you can maintain a conversation. And I kind of fell in love with it, not to say I fell in love with running per se, but that experience as well. And we continue that tradition to this day. We have a dog, we love to walk him together. Our favorite hobby together is probably walking the dog for really long walks. Maybe you could call them hikes sometimes, but like on a Saturday, we're like, what are we gonna do today? Let's go on a long walk, right? And that's just kind of our relationship. And even though we go on walks together every day, every time I'm on a walk with my husband and I'm like so excited, I'm like, now we can finally talk. And he's like, what do we have to talk about? We've been talking all day. I'm like, no, you don't get it. Now we get to finally connect. So for me, it's just a really special moment. We started playing board games more, for example, just going out and doing different things, meeting different people as well. So you absolutely have no idea where this could lead to and how you could have like new ways of bonding and relating to each other through this experience. Okay, what happens when your partner isn't doing dry January with you and it rubs you the wrong way? So the first, bits of advice were kind of about how to ensure that you're not threatening your partner or making them feel like you're a totally changed person and they've lost you or something like that. Now, what happens when your partner is annoying you with their drinking? So this one is tough. Obviously, they've done studies on this. Drunk people are annoying as hell, right? And when you all of a sudden aren't drinking anymore, you start to notice these really annoying parts about your partner if they are drinking. There's even studies that show that we're actually just less attracted to people who are under the influence than people who are not, because we really are attracted to presence and intellect and wit. And a lot of those things just aren't really there when someone is drinking. Even just a glass or two, you can start to see the difference and stuff like that. And so that can obviously be something that is just bugging you. Or maybe they're not annoying you per se, but it's triggering you too. Like you want to drink with them. So every time that they open a wine or pour themselves a cocktail or get a beer in the fridge, it triggers that like little, oh my gosh, I want a reward right now. I want this. And just imagine, yes, we have emotional dependence on alcohol for most of us who are drinkers. It's just the way it works on our brain. But just imagine if you were standing at a party and the waiter was passing around these beautiful hors d'oeuvres or canapes or something like that. And they passed it to everyone in the room, and everyone got this little beautiful treat that the chef made. But once they got to you, they completely ran out and you didn't have one. So oftentimes when your partner drinks in front of you when you're not drinking, it can feel like, wait, why did they get to get the treat and I didn't, right? And so we definitely want to work on this and recognize that there's so much more that this is showing you about your relationship with alcohol. Like your relationship with alcohol isn't clean yet. And, if this is your first dry January, there's no shame in that. There's a lot of like work to be done and it can be really exciting. But just knowing that this is being shown to you for a reason, there's so much more you can do to untangle your subconscious ties to alcohol. Because if it still feels like they get a treat and you don't, it means that you are very much still using alcohol as a way to reward yourself and as that main way of feeling like you get a treat at the end of the day. Now, imagine if I had done all the subconscious work to completely untangle all of my positive associations with alcohol. And this is again what I teach inside Euphoric, the club. If I did all of that work, if I made alcohol really meaningless, I completely lost my desire to drink. If my partner drinks in front of me, instead of thinking, oh, they're having a treat and I don't get to have a treat, I actually think, oh man, I kind of feel bad for them. They're going to feel so gross after that beer. You know what I mean? Like you see it completely differently. So if your partner is triggering you to the point where you're like, oh, I want that too, that's just a sign that there's so much more work to be done. And again, this is my Dry January series, so you might be completely new to this work, and there's absolutely no guilt to like never hurting of it before, but you just want to understand that alcohol is not like any other habit change. It's not like cutting out sugar or gluten or anything like that. It is such a concept that has been built up in our mind through society for years and years and years. And we want to entangle all of those threads, all of those strings, so that alcohol is literally meaningless to you and you really see it for what it is and you have just no desire from it. It actually doesn't even mean that you have to stop drinking forever. It means that you don't desire alcohol anymore, and it just makes everything easier. You can choose to drink occasionally, but oftentimes you're going to be like, why would I even want to? Or if you try it, you're like, that wasn't really appealing. That wasn't really satisfying anyways. That is where the ultimate freedom lies. So again, if your partner drinking in front of you is just like making you feel triggered and something like that, it's just a sign there's more work to be done. You might also feel like you can't do this if your partner doesn't do it either. And obviously that's normal. I've had clients and students have the same kind of idea, but we have to remember that that's kind of a sign of codependency, right? If you wanted to go back to grad school and your partner wasn't going to do it with you, would you be like, no, I can't do it because my partner's not doing it? If you wanted to, maybe run a half marathon yourself, would you be like, oh, well, I can't because my partner's not doing it? I mean, there's so many things in your life that you're going to move forward with, that you're going to choose for your own sake, regardless of whether your partner does it or not. And so I think that this is really a way to have a lot of independence for yourself and stand up for yourself and recognize you don't need your partner to do something in order for you to do it yourself. Obviously, would it make it easier, or would it make it seem like, your whole family, your whole household is doing it? Sure, right? But sometimes we get a sense of rebellion and a sense of like, oh, I'm different because you're doing something that maybe your partner's not doing. So it might actually serve you in a better way, right? And you have to just understand that if they're triggering you with your drinking, now obviously drunk people are annoying. Obviously there's boundaries that you can form, right? There's boundaries around like, we're not going to get intimate if you've had drinks. And maybe that's a thing for you. Maybe now that you're not drinking, you're just like, no, I can't. Like, we're not having sex if you've been drinking. Maybe you decide that like they drink on their own time and it's not during your quality bonding time. Or maybe you don't care really and it's like, okay, you could have a drink and I'll have a mocktail. It doesn't matter. So you have to decide like what you're comfortable with, and it's always okay to have boundaries, but the boundary can't be you can't drink, because only like the person themselves can come up with that conclusion for themselves. No one is going to be controlled into changing their relationship with alcohol by somebody else. And especially if you are in a relationship where you are the feminine and they are the masculine, so again, typically this is a woman with a man, but it really can work for a lot of homosexual relationships as well, as like whoever has the feminine energy versus whoever has the masculine energy, The masculine energy doesn't do very well when it's getting coached because it doesn't think of it as coaching, it thinks of it as nagging. And so oftentimes that feeling of like trying to tell your partner what to do backfires because they want to feel like they're in control and they're making their own decisions. So forcing them to do something that you're doing isn't going to work. And if you're triggered by them drinking, again, you want to look into boundaries. There's certain rules that you can have around it, but also it's more likely that you're triggered by them drinking because you still have those desires for alcohol and it's triggering that treat response for you. So that's where we need to go much deeper into the subconscious mind. Honestly, complete freedom is getting to the point where you see someone else drinking in front of you and you feel bad for them. Not in a judgmental way or anything like that. You just feel bad of like knowing this is not going to feel good later. They're drinking something that's just like making their mental system and their body systems all out of whack, and it's going to be a shitty experience when they're done with this. And every time I see someone drinking, that's the way I feel about it. And it's so funny because, I have that foresight where, nowadays, I'll tell you honestly too, is my husband continued drinking when I went alcohol free. He cut back a little bit, but it was still pretty predominant in his life. And I had all these different phases. I went through all the same stuff that I'm talking about today. Now, today that it's 8 years later, like he's taken massive breaks from alcohol as well. He's completely bought on to the philosophy of Euphoric. We work together, right? He's completely bought on. He completely understands how crappy the body feels after drinking, and it's not aligned with his goals and it's not aligned with his health. Now, does that mean he never has a drink or a beer every now and again? He does. But every single time he does, he relearns the lesson that he doesn't actually like it as much as he thought, right? And that's his journey. I'm not here to control him and force him to not drink exactly the way I do. He can go on his own journey and learn the lessons himself, right? I'm not going to try to change him. But do I have boundaries in place? Do I ensure that, like, okay, if you're drunk at a wedding, you can go hang out with this buddy instead of talking to me? You know what I mean? Like, of course, there's boundaries in that place. Now, what I have to say though is that, of all the clients I worked with and just seeing this kind of play out in different relationships, when we want to change our partners, it often backfires and our words are often meaningless compared to our actions. So if you really want to influence your partner to start drinking less or not at all, your actions are actually going to be the thing that moves the needle on that. And the longer your actions are consistent, the more effective they're going to be as well. And you have to know this, even though the masculine doesn't necessarily like to be coached by the feminine in a relationship. And I don't mean just in general, like in the world. Like obviously a man can work with a female coach or a therapist or something. I just mean like in an actual romantic relationship. Because the masculine doesn't like to be coached by the feminine in an intimate relationship because people like in the masculine often don't want to be out of control. And honestly, nobody really wants to be told what to do, right? Nobody wants to feel infantilized or patronized in that kind of way. We want to think that we come up with our own decisions and our own life actions. Actually, telling your partner not to drink might not necessarily be the best route. And that again just depends on their relationship with alcohol. If they have like a super like easy breezy, they don't really care about alcohol, and you're like, hey, can you support me and just not drink this dry January? And they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But I'm obviously catering to this episode for people who have more of those complicated interpersonal dynamics that is a little different from someone that's totally on board with what you're doing, right? So obviously we can ask our partners to do something with us, but it's usually in those rare circumstances that it's a very easy breezy thing for them. They don't really care either way, and they'll be happy to do something like this for us. So when we want our partners to change though, it's usually not our words, it's our actions. We have to understand that our partners and really anyone close to us is going to be influenced by us more than anyone else in the world. And that's really powerful because you feel powerless when you can't use your words to express change. But when you are able to know that I am influencing this person more than anyone else in their lives, just by who I'm being, just by what I'm doing, just by the new pursuits I'm pursuing, that can often go so much further than just that kind of nagging them to change. And you never know what kind of change you might inspire. I have heard so many stories of the partner or the husband following suit when his wife decided to go alcohol free a year later or many months later, right? Usually not right away. I've heard many beautiful stories of two partners being alcohol free after that time, or someone who just starts drinking a lot less and kind of gets over it on their own as well. I've also heard of stories of people who are really mismatched. And, it's usually 90% of the time you can work through it. And then there's that 10% of the time that's like, maybe I did fall in love with a completely different person and I'm not attracted to that person anymore. Or there's a lot more toxicity here than I thought, right? And, obviously go look into relationship therapy and programs like that can help you through those kind of situations, right? But I find that a lot of the times when we are able to influence our partners, it's not always the kind of change that we would have assumed, So imagine that you do dry January, you start focusing on your health more, you continue not drinking in February and March and April, and you just look more vibrant, more healthy. And imagine that your partner's watching you do all this, and really it's seeping into their subconscious more than you know, and it inspires your partner to go launch a business in May. And you don't even understand how related those two things are because he watched you change your life and now he's motivated to change his too, even if it's in a completely different way, right? And so I think this is like really beautiful about thinking about it. Our partners are there to teach us things. We choose our partners. And if you think of it from a soul contract level, like imagine that you came to this planet and chose to be with this person for a specific reason to teach you certain things. And so all of these kind of negative side effects that can come across from you changing and them not are things that maybe the universe is trying to show you for you to heal, for you to clear up, and for you to be able to stand on your own and in love with someone who means a lot to you, right? And I also want to share this concept with you that I got from this book called, what is it called? Money Creativity. I have to go look it up. We'll get the right book title in the show notes. But it's all about this concept called serving their soul, not their personality. And so this is an idea where, let's say, your partner doesn't like you doing dry January, doesn't like you not drinking, wants you to start drinking with them again. Do you think that's their soul speaking to you, or do you think that's their personality speaking to you? Let's imagine another scenario. Let's imagine that you have this beautiful vision where you want to launch your own business and quit your day job eventually and really give financial freedom to your family and be able to travel the world. And your husband thinks it's a bad idea and he's scared. Do you think that is his soul speaking, or do you think that's his personality speaking? So oftentimes you can tell that there's a difference between the soul and the personality. The personality is stuck in the egoic thinking. They're stuck in their fears. They're stuck in their limiting beliefs. They're stuck in the reality of their, conditioning and then what society expects. And then there's their deeper soul, right? Their deeper soul who does believe in you, who does want to change, who does want to continue evolving with you. And so this concept of serving their soul, not their personality, means that sometimes you have to be able to see through the way that their ego is showing up in that moment and actually do the deeper changes that are required, or push yourself or take a risk. I run my certification program every year, twice a year. And I talk to a lot of people who want to join, and a lot of them join, but obviously there's some people who don't end up joining. And sometimes people, say like, well, I have to talk to my husband about it. And I find this a very interesting thing to say because it's like, okay, are you asking out of respect for them, or are you asking for their permission? And again, it goes back into that codependence of like, if you want to launch a business, if you want to become a coach, why does your partner's opinion about it have anything to do with the decision you're going to make, right? It really has that sense of like you're being served by their personality and not what their soul wants for you. Their soul wants for you to go after your dreams, but their personality might be stuck in fear in that moment. And so imagine if you really allowed yourself to be the visionary in this case, if you allowed yourself to go on this alcohol-free journey and see where it really takes you, see how far it can take you as well. Because what happens in 4 months alcohol-free is so different from what happens in 1 month. What happens in a year is different from 6 months. What happens in 4 years is different from 2 years. Like, what if I really saw where this journey would take me? And that's what I love so much about what's happened in my relationship as kind of like the story of this is that, yeah, my husband and I met when I was partying a lot at 23. Yeah, we kind of settled down and started being healthier together, but we still drank for most of our quality time together. Yeah, it was weird when I first went alcohol free. Yeah, I did have to handle these situations when he would drink and I wouldn't, or him being drunk at a wedding or something. And yeah, he did grow and watch me launch my own company, quit my job, and literally go on such a limb and such a big risk to build this dream and build this vision. But where are we today now? My husband is unevocably my best friend, my biggest cheerleader. He is my COO of Euphoric, the company. We work together every single day that we work, obviously, a working day. We have so much quality time together. We travel the world together. Euphoric is our livelihood. This is what supports my entire household. He doesn't work anywhere else. I was able to retire him in 2022, and now he works for Euphoric. So he's not really retired, but you just say that because it's an easier way of understanding it. He left the corporate world. We travel the world together. We host retreats together. We host events together. He's so bought in. He loves working with my clients. He remembers them. He cares about them. Do you think my husband would have even had a morsel of this vision that was possible for us back when I first did my dry January? Do you think he understood the power and the magnitude of the life we could create by making this one decision? Now, I love the guy. He's a pretty wise guy. He's a pretty amazing, sincere, genuine man. But I don't think back then he would have known, and I don't think from his personality he would have known either. Maybe his soul on a deeper level, but not from the level of the ego, not from the level of the personality. And look at the life we've built. Look at everything that's happened because I went all in on my vision, not worrying about what he cared about it necessarily, but still trying to bond with him over time and still making sure that our relationship was growing in a positive way. I learned to put up boundaries. I learned to not get triggered by him drinking because I completely lost my desire for drinking. And I influenced him in such a deep way that he barely even drinks now. And when he does, it's so aligned with his values and his health goals, he just doesn't really like it, right? And I influenced him to the point of, quitting his job and traveling to Europe every summer and traveling the world with me as we build this beautiful movement of Euphoric. None of this was conceivable really to either of us back then, but I'm so freaking glad I worked through all the little complexities, all the little, relationship dynamics that come up to arrive where we are today. Now, you might be at the very beginning of your dry January story. Maybe this is your first, maybe this is your third dry January. Maybe you've been alcohol-free for a few months and you found this podcast. Maybe you are a diehard listener and you listen every single week and you have for years. I love you all, right? But I hope this episode plants some seeds of what you could possibly create in your romantic relationship. And some of the advice that's been really helpful for me and my clients to, maintain your peace, focus on you, focus on your fulfillment, focus on losing your desire to drink, and then knowing that your influence is way bigger than you think and allowing yourself to go first, even when your partner's not going first. Because you might be the first one alcohol-free, but you have no idea how that will influence him in a year or two from now. You might be the one who launches a business and he's like totally scared and worried that you guys won't make money. And then in a few years from now, it's going to be the nest egg. It's going to be the thing that supports your whole family. You might be the one who really wants to, take your career to the next level and he is on board and gets it, but just doesn't quite understand. Like, we have to learn to do things because we are visionaries and we go first without always having everyone on board. Now, again, like I mentioned, this podcast episode is mostly around your actual partner, but a lot of these principles can also be applied to family and friends. But obviously, there's a little bit more distance that you can have with them. If you need to have a stronger boundary with family or friends, or if you have to just not go into it with them, you always have that prerogative and you're always able to invite in more aligned friends into your life. Doesn't mean you need to ditch all your friends or stop hanging out with people. People are always teaching us and mirroring to us what things that we need to learn. But being surrounded by growth-oriented women who are not drinking, who are going after big goals in their lives and optimizing their health, that is where it's at. There is where the huge changes are made because you're normalizing it in your environment. I'd love to invite you to join Euphoric the Club. It's my monthly membership where you get all access to all of my alcohol-free programs to lose the desire to drink, get high on building your dream life instead. We have monthly wellness challenges, so January is all about nourishing ourselves, and I share all of my life hacks on, incorporating more veggies in my life and eating while traveling and all that kind of stuff. We also do, in addition to wellness challenges, we do purpose challenges. things like connecting with our ancestors and going all after our purpose and doing things that scare us. So it's a really, really fun community. It comes with coaching calls, we have movement classes, and guest experts and book clubs. So you can learn more at the link below for Euphoric the Club. But especially if you're already dabbling into this dry January thing and, maybe it's going well and you want to keep going, maybe it was a little more damp than you wanted to and you really want to work on this in your life, you shouldn't be doing it alone because that is where you're living in that vacuum. That is where it's so hard to make the change when it's not being reflected all around you, especially when you have partners and friends and family who are still in the old way of doing things, right? And being surrounded by successful women who don't drink is literally what's going to osmosis you into that version of yourself as well, who loves life, who is so on fire to optimize her health, and who ensures that there's so much meaning and fulfillment in her life that alcohol, like, literally isn't even alluring anymore. So, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Stay tuned for our Dry January series, and I'm wishing you just the best.